Hello and welcome to How to Convince Your Friends You're Good at Cooking, the show that teaches uni students or anyone else willing to learn how to make good meals cheaply. Today we'll be covering a favourite of many people and honestly I would say the crowd pleaser to please all crowds, lasagna. Now I want to put a little disclaimer here for any Italians watching. I am not Italian, nor do I claim to be an expert in Italian food. In fact, I'm sure this lasagna is going to be blasphemy to you. But it's cheap, delicious, and easily one of my friends' favourite things that I make. So as much as it may not be traditional, it's what I would call a student lasagna. So as always, let's get started with our ingredients. But this time I've broken down the ingredients into 3 different sections. The first one is ingredients you definitely need, such as beef, mushrooms, onion, tinned tomatoes, ricotta, mozzarella, garlic, and lasagna sheets. The second is additional things that I've added to amp up this lasagna to 11. Pork mince, lemon, parmesan, and a secret ingredient, baked beans. The third is the seasonings you'll need. Salt, pepper, bay leaf, Worcester sauce, nutmeg, oregano, and basil. The price of this lasagna, including all the additional ingredients I've added, is £12, which is easily enough to feed 4 to 6 people depending on appetites. So the foundation for any good lasagna starts with your meat sauce. And what does a meat sauce start with? Vegetables, of course. So add your finely chopped onion and mushrooms to a pan and saute them with a little bit of oil. Make sure to sprinkle some salt on top. This will draw the moisture out of the mushrooms and make sure they cook more evenly. In fact, a good measure to know when you're done with this is you can see when all of the liquid has evaporated out of the pan. Once your onions and mushrooms have been cooked, you can add your garlic. If you're wondering how exactly I chopped this onion and these garlic cloves, then be sure to check out my video on how to dice onions and garlic linked below. Once the garlic has been sauteed for 30 seconds, you are ready to add your meat. Now right here I'm adding a mixture of beef and pork. I have chosen this because it is an amazing combination of flavours here. The pork brings a certain fattiness to it which makes it even more umptuous and delicious, and beef is beef and gives a delicious beefy flavour. Honestly though, you do not need to use both these meats. As I mentioned in the ingredients thing, I would consider pork mince an additional ingredient just to give it a bit more oomph. Cook your meat with your vegetables until it is all the way done. You should be looking at something that looks roughly like this when you're done with it. Once that's all done, add the contents into a big saucepan because you're ready to turn this meat concoction into a sauce. Get this large saucepan heating up on medium heat before adding your tin of tomatoes. Once your tin of tomatoes are all in there, fill up the can with some water and pour it into the pot. This will allow your sauce to reduce without losing too much volume, as well as clean out the can so you can put it in the recycling. Give that a stir and pop in your bay leaf, followed by salt, pepper, your tin of beans, Worcester sauce, oregano, and basil. Taste for seasoning now, but bear in mind that as the sauce reduces, the flavour will intensify. So if it's just a little bit off, it's probably best to leave it. What you don't want to do is over-season. You can always add a little bit more in at the end. In terms of your seasoning, you'll notice that I haven't given you any exact amounts. The reason for this is because I want you to season it to your tastes. In terms of the more unusual ingredients, like the baked beans, I'll explain everything in the article below. Once that's all in and has been brought to a gentle simmer, like so, you're ready for what I would say is the most difficult part of this recipe. Leaving your sauce alone. Leave it be for about 45 minutes to an hour and a half, or till it's reduced. Don't have the heat up too high or it will burn. It should be just gently simmering like so. Keep checking up on it and give it a stir every now and then. But don't feel like you have to be constantly playing with the sauce. Just let it sit there and do its thing and let the ingredients and flavours all get to know each other. After it's done reducing, it should look like this. If there are any vegetarians watching, the article linked below will tell you how to make a vegetarian version of this sauce. While your meat sauce is simmering, it's probably a good idea to prepare your ricotta filling. Now in a traditional lasagna, they use a bechamel cheese sauce instead of this ricotta filling that I'm making now. I've done a whole video on how to make a cheese sauce from a bechamel, which will be linked down below. Start by putting your ricotta into a bowl. Make sure you've drained off all of that nasty water it comes with. No one wants to eat that. Then add the juice of 1 lemon as well as a bit of zest. If you've ever wondered when to use zest and when to use juice, I'll make sure to put a bit about that in the article below. You can then add a little bit of nutmeg. Remember, nutmeg can be very overpowering, so do not use too much. Then a crack of black pepper, followed by your diced up mozzarella. Please try and use actual fresh mozzarella, you know, the one that looks like a squishy golf ball. I'm using about half of a ball here because I want the rest of it to be able to go on top and melt later on. You are then going to add a load of parmesan and stir it all together and give it a taste. You'll notice I didn't add any salt. The reason for that is parmesan is quite salty, so what you don't want to do is add it too early on only to realise you don't need it later. After you've tasted it now, see if you need some salt. If you do, add it. You can also add a little splash of Worcester sauce, which goes great with any cheese dish. Now your cheese filling and meat sauce are done, you are ready to assemble your lasagna. In order to make sure your layers are lovely and even, we're gonna need to do a bit of math, but not very hard maths, I promise you. All you need to do is divide your meat sauce into quarters and your cheese filling in half. So we're going to start by adding about a quarter of our meat sauce to the bottom of our baking dish. We are then going to layer our lasagna sheets on top of that. You can either cook them beforehand or leave them like this. It really doesn't matter, it's personal preference. Then on top of those pasta sheets you are going to spread half of your cheese mixture. And on top of your ricotta you are going to add your meat sauce, a quarter of it again. Now it's time for another layer of pasta. You can probably see that I'm using little broken bits to fill in the gaps. Honestly, do it. It will come out perfectly at the end regardless. Once that second pasta layer is down, you can add another layer of your cheese filling. And on top of that, another quarter of your meat sauce. And then you guessed it, another layer of pasta. Put on the last part of your meat sauce on top of this pasta, then dot it with mozzarella and another grating of parmesan. This will melt down and become gooey and delicious at the end. Once your lasagna has been constructed, you can pop it into a preheated 180-degree oven for 30 to 45 minutes. Just check on it every now and then after the 30-minute mark and see when the top has melted and gone golden. You should also be able to easily stick your knife in with very little resistance, as the pasta should all be cooked through. Once that's done, you can take it out the oven and leave it to rest for 10 minutes. We do this so you don't burn your mouth, much like the mac and cheese, but also if you want that beautiful square slice to serve for your guests, it will not hold its shape while it is boiling hot. After you've sat staring at your lasagna for 10 minutes, you are ready to serve it. So using a spatula, cut out a square like this, plate it up, and allow your friends to wow and enjoy. Thank you very much for watching this video, and for all the amazing feedback you gave on my first recipe video. You guys have been amazing. These videos, as mentioned before, will be coming out every 2 weeks, with every other week a skills video coming out. So be ready for your knife sharpening video next Sunday. If you enjoyed this content and want to see more, make sure to like and subscribe, and comment down below on what you want to see made next. Next week we will be tackling a vegetarian dish in ratatouille.